React.js is one of the most popular JavaScript libraries in the whole wide world. It is a declarative, efficient, and flexible JavaScript library that is used to build user interfaces. It gives you the ability to compose extremely complex UIs from small and isolated pieces of code, which are called components. Many of the most rich, popular, and successful companies around the world, like Facebook, Apple, Airbnb, Walmart, Netflix, and PayPal, I could go on. These companies utilize React in their UI operations because React makes it painless to create interactive user interfaces. The fact that it's declarative and not imperative actually makes your code more predictable and easier to debug. Hello everybody, my name is Kutlo. I should probably title this video The Case for React, but I believe I have in simple terms encapsulated why it's very important that as a developer you need to learn React.js. My channel's name is called Coding 101. I post exciting and intuitive videos like this one to make your programming journey much easier. If that tickles your fancy, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. In this video, I am going to be teaching you how to use React. And no, this is not another ordinary tutorial for beginners video on YouTube, because I promise you that by the end of this video, you will not only understand surface knowledge of how React works, but I'm going to show you why React works, the inner workings of React.js. And I also promise you that by the end of this video, you will be able to build, construct, and deploy your very own React website. Just think about it. You'll be able to show it to your friends, your families, and potential employer the thing you just built using React.js. Let's get into it, shall we? But wait, did you subscribe to my channel? Did you like the video? If you did, thank you. Your participation will go a long way into encouraging me to make more videos like this. Enough of the small talk. Let's get into understanding the inner workings of React.js. So the thing about React, which makes it very unique, is that instead of having to edit something in one file, you can break down your code into smaller components and then work on those components individually. Consider this to-do application that you're seeing over here. You can see that there's a lot of components that really make up this to-do list application. It's for example, you have the title over here, and then you have this text field, you have this button, you have this print bills statement, and that kind of stuff. Now, under normal circumstances, what would happen is that if we were to click view source code, you would see that in HTML, this entire thing is built under one HTML file. And that is really cumbersome. That is a lot of code in one setting. So the thing about React, it breaks down everything into small bits and pieces so that you can work on those small bits and pieces individually instead of having to struggle to scroll through an entire application. Now, once again, consider this New Year website over here. If you were to look through the code, let me just show you the code in a minute. So this is the code for this website, right? So you can see that this is a lot. This is a lot. And this falls in one file. Look at this. So it's really a struggle to actually debug this or to maintain this type of code because it's a lot of code under one setting. And this is what React aims to solve. It aims to break down this code into bits and pieces so that you can really try and solve these things, or if you have any problems, if you have any bugs, you're able to solve those bugs individually. So exactly what do I mean by bits and pieces? So let's go back to our to-do list website and let me just show you in simple terms what I mean by that. So in React, this entire thing over here that you see would be considered as the header of your to-do list. And over here, this would be your to-do item. And then at the same time, this entire thing over here would be considered your to-do list items altogether. So if you look at this, you can see that there are 3 components, and not forgetting this button that we see over here. So if you can look at this clearly, you can see that there are 3 or 4 components here that make up this to-do list application. So what React does is that it breaks all these components of this application into separate components, into separate, you can say each individual HTML files, but these are not actually HTML files. They're actually called JSX file. And what JSX is a language that combines JavaScript and HTML. So you have JavaScript operating inside of an HTML file. So that is a JSX application. So in this example that we're looking at here, we would have to just like simply break down this entire project into bits and pieces. So that, for example, if we were to have a problem with the header, then we would just go straight to the header file and actually fix that problem. If we were to have a problem with the to-do list items or the to-do list item, then we would go to that specific to-do list item and actually fix that problem there. So it's easier to debug, and it's also easy to actually read your code and understand your code, especially for somebody who probably has not seen your code. So let's get a little bit into JSX, what JSX is. So like I said, the JSX is just a language that combines HTML and JavaScript. So you would have an HTML tag like this. Let me just show you. You would have something like H1, and it really helps you to become dynamic with your coding. So instead of putting the title like in static terms, you would just say coding 101 here. Let's say maybe you probably do not know, you don't know what the channel name is called, but you're expecting a variable or a parameter, an argument to be passed to your component in order to receive this title. So JSX allows you to actually input a variable as just like you would do in JavaScript using these curly brackets that you would see here. So you would just say channel name. And so when the channel name comes from the component, it would be situated inside of this element or inside of this tag that you see over here. So this is a pure example of JSX. It combines HTML and it combines JavaScript. So that is what we're actually using in React. We're using JSX, which is a combination of JavaScript and HTML. There are many use cases of JSX. We're going to be seeing them as we go through our entire list. You can also use the map keyword inside of our JSX in order to repetitively render an HTML element. So instead of, let's say, for example, you want to repetitively type out a title, or let's say you have like a list of items, let's say fruits. So you have like fruits equals to, it's an array. So first you have apple. Let me try to make this. So first you have apple, and then you have mango, and then you have banana. And now you want to be able to render this list of items, but not using the list item tag. You want to render it using the p tag. Now you can keep doing the p tag over and over again, but what if you don't actually know what's inside of that array? You don't actually know the fruits that are inside of that array, so you want to dynamically render these fruits. So what you can do is that you can use in JSX allows you to actually say fruits.map, and inside of here you would say fruit, and then you would just say p tag, and then you just make a closing tag over here, and then you would put fruit over there, and actually you're supposed to make a curly bracket. So this is what you would do in JSX, and this would automatically render your fruits in a list-like format. So don't worry, we're gonna do this and we're gonna execute it, and I'm gonna show you how it works in real-time code as we continue with our application. So I've showed you, as we continue with our tutorial, so I've showed you how React works in terms of components being broken down and working together. So now I'm gonna show you how the inner workings again of React.js. So now every single website has something that is called a DOM, Document Object Model. So some say it is a tree-like structure that details how elements are structured inside of a website. So every website that you're going to create, especially with HTML, every element that you have positioned inside of that HTML file is going to be deduced into something called a document object model, and it is a tree-like structure like the one that you're seeing on your screen right now. So what that essentially means is that every time an element is changed, so let's say for example over here you have an anchor tag, and that anchor tag has a text inside called my link. So if this my link over here were to change, that means the compiler would have to go to the DOM and actually change this text that you're seeing over here. So engineers tell us that rebuilding or re-rendering the DOM is actually quite an expensive exercise. For you to have to rebuild your entire browser is a very, very expensive exercise. So this is why React has its own virtual DOM. So if a change is made with respect to the DOM, then the virtual DOM would change. And then after the virtual DOM has been edited or updated accordingly, now the virtual DOM would simply, let me just illustrate with a pen, the virtual DOM would check with the real DOM and say, hey, are we in sync? Are we together? Because what needs to happen is that the virtual DOM needs to be exactly the same with the real DOM. So after the virtual DOM is rendered or is updated, it checks whether what's happening in the virtual DOM also applies in the real DOM. Any change that is inside of the virtual DOM will then be applied to the real DOM. That exact change. So for example, if maybe over here we change this my link here to say coding link, right? So we say coding link, we're changing that text. What would happen is that it would go to the real DOM. Instead of re-rendering the entire thing, it would just come here specifically and edit that part of our virtual DOM instead of re-rendering the entire thing. So this is how React saves time, or React is optimized, in that instead of continuously having to update or re-render the DOM or repaint your screen continuously, it doesn't do that. It just updates the part where updating is necessary. So that is why React has its own virtual DOM, and that is why React is a little bit faster than your modern languages. Alright, if you're having trouble with that understanding, please let me know. I do have a video that explains how this entire virtualization process or reconciliation process actually works. So I'll probably leave it or just put it up on the card so that you can just check it out on your spare time. Alright, so now let's go to the coding aspect of React. I believe I've given you enough background for you to be able to understand how React works, or the inner workings of React. Now, before we continue into the configuration aspect of React, there's one more thing that I need you to understand, is that React uses actually a modern day version of JavaScript. Or you may choose to use a modern day version of JavaScript, but at the end of the day, popularly uses a modern day version of JavaScript called ES5. So, and there's also ES6, but popularly many people use ES5. So now, the thing is that most browsers do not understand ES5 because ES5 is a modern day version of JavaScript. Like I already said, most browsers only understand an older version of JavaScript. So now we need to have a way in order to convert the modern way of writing JavaScript into an old way of writing JavaScript. And this is where something called Babel comes in. So Babel transpiles or convert modern JavaScript or ECMAScript 2015 code into a backward compatible version of JavaScript in current and old browsers or environments. So all browsers or all environments understand the old version of JavaScript. So Babel helps us transpile or convert this new or modern version of JavaScript into an old version of JavaScript so that all the browsers or all environments are able to understand what the heck we're talking about. Now, one example of this, let me give you an example of this. So this is a modern way of writing functions using an arrow function. This is called an arrow function. So what would happen is that a transpiler, which is Babel, so that's what that thing is called. It's called a transpiler. Now, the difference between compiling and transpiling is that in compiling, you're converting from one language to the other. But in transpiling, you're converting the same language into a maybe older or newer version of the same language. So you're not converting from one language to another language, but you're converting within the same environment or within the same language when we're talking about transpiling. So Babel is our transpiler that will then take this arrow function and then convert it into an older version of JavaScript or an older way of writing a function. So this is a very, very important concept that you have to understand with JavaScript. So now we're going to move on to the configuration stage of React. So we're going to learn how to actually configure React. And we're going to be using a very, very, very modern and a special tool. And this tool is actually called Vite. I have a YouTube tutorial on Vite if you need to know about Vite a little bit more. So previously we had used a package called Create React App, but now we've moved on to Vite. So Vite is what it does, it establishes our React environment. So it establishes our React template that we're going to use. So it is very fast, it's lightning fast, and it's easier to work with compared with the initial way of actually creating a React template. But this one is easier to use for reasons that I have stated in my other video. I will leave that link at the very top as well so that you can understand that. So in order to use Vite, all you need to do, and so by the way, I do want to mention that this tutorial assumes that you know a little bit about Node.js, because before we get into this project, then you would need to have installed Node.js into your computer. If you're not familiar with Node.js, just simply go to the nodejs.org website and just download the latest Node.js, or the one that is recommended for most users, and follow the installation instructions so that you have Node.js installed. And to check if your Node.js has been installed in your computer, you would just simply say node.v and it would give you the version that is currently running. Also check if you have Node Package Manager installed, and then it's going to give you the version for your Node Package Manager. So now if you have Node and Node Package Manager installed in your computer, normally if you install Node, then the Node Package Manager would install automatically. And so let's just clear this up. How do you clear that? That's cool. Right, so in order to create a React template or to configure a React environment, you would just simply say npm init vite at, oh my goodness, vite at latest, like that. And then it's gonna guide you through a couple of steps or a couple of questions that you would need to answer, and it's gonna give you through a couple. It's gonna and what it's gonna do is that it's gonna make you go through a couple of questions that you need to answer in order to shape up your project. So first you have to give your project the name. So I'm gonna give it the name beginner. Okay, so I'm gonna give it. Is that how you spell beginner? Okay, I don't know. So I'm just gonna say React like that. And then after that, you come over here, you select the framework that you would like to use. I'm going to select React because that's what I want to use. And then it's going to ask you to choose a variant. I'm going to say JavaScript for now. And then after I'm done, I just need to go into my project, cd React. And then after that, I have to say npm install. I wonder if it's going to give me a bit of trouble because I named my project React, but we'll see. Alright, and then once our npm packages have finished installing, we can open up our React project. There it is. Let's try to go step by step and really see what is inside there. So inside of here, we have our node modules that enable our React to actually work. One thing that you can see over here is the Babel that we were just talking about that just simply transpiles a new JavaScript into old JavaScript. And we have a couple of public files over here. And we have components that you can see. So this is JSX that you can see, and the beauty of JSX, as you can see over here, you can just like put in your JavaScript into your HTML, and it makes it beautiful in order to do that. Right, and this is your package.json, this is your index.html. So because React is normally known as a single page application, so the reason why it's called a single page application is that everything that we're doing here is going to be put inside of this HTML page. So it's like we're just dealing with one HTML page. We're not dealing with multiple HTML page. So by reason of this HTML page, we're able to present our information. So all the JSX that we'll be using here is going to ultimately be presented or inserted inside of this index.html. So yeah, I think that is about it. And then git ignore it just allows you, if you are using git, it enables you to not upload some of these files that you see over here, but you don't have to stress about that. So now, in order to run our project using Vite, let me just say, we just simply need to say npm run dev like that. And then of course, and the beautiful thing about Vite is that to cold start a project doesn't really take much. So you can just like copy this and just go to your simple browser, and you can come over here, copy that in, and there is our project. So essentially, if you're a beginner, this means that this is your new website that you just created by just configuring React. So the good thing about this is that it shows you how React essentially works. You can see that once I click count here, it's able to update my count. It's able to sort of like change the interface. So I think if I'm doing this, you can just like revert back to what we talked about with regard to virtualization, or DOM virtualization or reconciliation. And it really explains a lot how everything works with regard to DOM, the virtual DOM and the real DOM. But let's not get into that complicated stuff. Let's try to understand how this thing works. How am I able to press here and it's able to update automatically without updating the entire page? And you will see that it's very simple to do. Let's try to go through the entire JSX step by step. So I'm just gonna take this over the side. All right. So first, as you can see, we have like these two logos. We have a Vite logo, and then we have a React logo. So the beautiful thing about that is that we have our assets stored inside of here. This is where we have our assets stored. We have the React SVG stored in this asset that you're seeing over here, and we're able to reference it, we're able to import it. So this is how you would import an asset inside of React. You would just simply say import, and you would give it a special name. This is a name that it has been invented. So this is, you would just call it React logo, and then you would import it as such, and then you would put it inside of your SRC like that. And then after that, you're able to wrap that whole thing in an anchor tag so that every time you click that, it takes you to the appropriate website. And so this is pretty much the same thing with the Vite.svg. Except instead of actually referencing it from directly from the import statement, we can just use this thing over here. So yeah, and then the Vite thing is pretty much the same thing, but except in this case, you don't have to use import. You can just like use a local path in order to get that SVG file. All right, so this is our header. I would want to assume that this is our header. And over here, this is our H1 tag, our heading. And inside of here, what we have is we have a button. So this is the button that we're using. So each time we press that button, you will notice that the count is updated, right? So this is an event, obviously. You can see that. This is an event. And let's try to separate this so that you can like see it much more clearly. So this is our button, and our button has what we call an event tied to it. And the event utilizes something called a state. So each component that you have inside of React can contain a state. So a state is like simply the behavior that is attributed to a component. So in this component, we have a state called count. So it's more like a variable, but it is like sort of like the character that is attached to that particular state. So what happens inside of React is that each time a state is changed, then that means the DOM is changed as well. That means like the component is re-rendered because of that state change. So that is the reason why we can come back here, and every time we click, then this part of our project is re-rendered because the state has changed. But it would happen differently if we were to have a const state. So you can see So it's very different from like an ordinary constant. A state triggers a re-rendering of our project so that whatever is on the screen is updated. So this over here is an arrow function. So we're utilizing our our state has two parts to it. It has a setter method. You have the state and then you have the setter method. So this method over here is used to actually manipulate the state. In this case, it is used to update the state. So this is how we're using it. So this over here is actually called a React hook. And this React hook allows us to be able to use our state in such a manner. So we're able to destruct the state, and we're able to destruct from that variable, we're able to destruct the setter method for the state. So this is our state. This is how you would write a state in React. Let's try a different state. You can just like name this maybe counter, and you can give it a different setter method and just say set counter and then say use state like that. So this is how we would make a state. You can make another state, maybe let's say your name. And then you can just like say, maybe you don't even have to say set, you can say update name like that. But it's common practice to just say set something. So you just say use state like that, and then you say coding 101. So this is how you would create a state inside of a component. It's very important to note that the state is only accessible within the component, and it cannot be accessed outside of the component unless you explicitly throw it out so that it can be accessed by other components. But for this tutorial, all you need to know is that the state is only accessible inside of in the realm of the component and is not accessible outside of the component. A state is the behavior that is attached to the component, and it describes that behavior. So in this case, we're dealing with this state over here, the state of count. So remember, I said that every time a state is changed, that means the entire component is re-rendered. So what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to update the state. We're trying to update the state which is called count. So what we want to happen is that each time we click that button, we want to increment our count by 1. So in order for us to increment, we need to get the existing state. And this is how we get the existing state with this callback function that you see over here. We get the existing state and we update it accordingly. And then we say whatever count that you have currently incremented by 1. And then over here, we have the method, we have actually, the title or the text that is ultimately re-rendered because it's tied to the state over here. So each time you press this button over here, the count state is updated and incremented accordingly. Alright, so I hope that I explained that properly, so you can click over here and you can see. But the thing about a state, though, I need to mention is that each time you refresh, it's not persistent. Each time you refresh, then the state goes back to its original or its default value. So it's not exactly persistent to the particular browser. But every time you click, you can see it's incremented accordingly. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use another state. So I've used a name state over here. So what I want to happen is that I'm going to create a button over here. So what I want to happen is that each time I click this button, when I click the button, actually, I want the title to change. So I'm going to create an on-click event. I'm going to tie it to this button over here. What happens is that when you refresh your browser, this method is going to run automatically. It's not even going to wait for an event to take place. It's going to run automatically. So this is why we need to make a callback function in this particular case. So now we're going to update the name. We're going to say coding 101, right? All right. And then I'm going to, so I'm not actually going to change the title. I'm just going to create a different tag entirely. And then in here, I'm going to put in my name over here. So maybe and then I'm going to, oh, sorry, that's the name. I'm going to give it a default name. Oh, there's the default name. So first, I think I'm going to call it Learning React. And what I want to happen is that each time I click that button, or when I click that button, this name is going to, the state over here, the state of the name is going to change to coding 101. And as the state changes, then this h3 tag, the inner text of this h3 tag will change accordingly. So that's what we want to happen. Fingers crossed. So now we go back to our browser and we go to, oh, we didn't put like the name of an inner text inside of the button. So that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to call it Press Me. I want it to be at the bottom of that button, so I'm just going to click a BR tag inside there, and there it is. I'm going to give it another BR tag because I want it to be completely separate from that button that is above. So there you see, there is our button that you're seeing over here. So what we expect to happen is this part over here to change when we click here, because remember, this part is tied to our state. So if I click, you can see that the title, or the H3 tag that we had over here, the inner text was changed because it was tied to the state. So that is the meaning of a state. What a state does, every time it is changed, it re-renders. It is dynamic. So whenever you dealing with something that changes constantly inside of your project, make sure that you are using a state. All right. So I think we've learned about state management, and we've learned a bit about event management as well. So what we're going to learn about now, we're going to learn how to insert CSS into our project, because you can see that our buttons that we have over here have a particular format. They're a bit gray, but how do you actually make our buttons to stand out? So obviously we need to use CSS, right? So we have our index.css file over here that is imported. Actually, we're using app.css. So this is the file that we're using. So our boilerplate project has actually created a CSS file over here that is able to describe those buttons that you see over there. So, and then the moment we import the CSS, those CSS settings are accordingly applied. All right. So now you can see that that button over here is made. I can't seem to find where the card is, where the button is styled. Maybe it's in our index.css. Let me try and check. Yeah, I think it's in our index.css. Yeah, I think it's in our index.css, so it is like through this media query that you're seeing over here. So it's in our index.css. So the thing about importing CSS files in this manner is that you can see that in this app.jsx file, we don't necessarily import index.css, but for some reason, those CSS styles that we have in this style sheet, for some reason, they apply in this app.jsx. But why is that? Why is it that we have not imported index.css in this file, and yet these styles that we're seeing over here are carried onto the app.jsx file? And the reason for that is because app.jsx is a child of main.jsx. So you can see that app.css that you're seeing over here, by the way, if you import a component like you can see over here, the moment you import a component like this, this is how you would ultimately write it out. So you can see that in here, this is where we've imported our index.css files. So because app.jsx is a child of main.jsx, those styles that come from index.css are automatically imported or adopted by app.jsx. So that is something to be very careful of. But you say, Kudra, how can I avoid that? What if I want some styles to only apply to index.jsx and I don't want them to apply to app.jsx? And this is why you would use something called inline styling. You would style your components directly. So in this case, let's say our button that we just created right now, instead of, I want to remove this BR tag and I want to give it a margin. So in order to do that, I would just say style, and you would style it in a JavaScript manner. If you're familiar with JavaScript styling in CSS, in HTML CSS, then you would know how this works. So you would just simply say margin, and you would give it 10 like that. And if we go back to our project, you can see that there's a bit of a distance now between our two buttons because I put in the margin setting. So now let's try to change the color as well. So I would just simply say background color like that. You can see that it's giving me suggestions. So I want it to be light blue like that. And there you see it. I want the inner text to be yellow. So we just say color, and then this is going to be yellow like that. And as you can see, it's yellow. And then I want to give it a border radius of 10 to make it a little bit more round. And as you can see, it's a little bit more round than when we found it. And then I want the font size to be a little bit bigger. So we can give it a font size of 16 pixels. And as you can see, the font size has increased significantly, but if you can't seem to see that, we can just like change it to 20 like that, so that you can like really see how the text has really become more pronounced. Alright, so that's how you would like simply style your CSS tags like that. This is called inline styling. But I do want to say React has a couple of CSS libraries that you can use inside of it. One of the most popular ones is Tailwind CSS. I do have a video with regarding Tailwind CSS, so you can just really check that out and just see how Tailwind CSS is used within React. It's very, very important for you to do so. Alright, so this is inline styling. And the other thing that you can do is like a couple of, there's also what you call styled components. So with styled components, you can like simply just go to styledcomponents.com and check this library out. So how styled component actually works, it's like you are creating a component in advance before you actually use it. So it's like you're creating an element and styling it in advance before actually using it. So over here, I'm styling an anchor link. So you can see, I start by saying styled.a. So this A represents the anchor tag or the anchor element. So I'm styling it, I'm giving it all the styles, then I put this, I do these backticks that you see over here, and then I put in my styles, ordinary CSS, and then I put in my paddings, my background, my color, and everything. And these are some dynamic props that you see over here. And after I'm done doing that, I can just implement that button inside of my code. So instead of saying A, I'm going to just say button. The same way that you would use HTML, it's the same way you would use this tag that you see over here. So you style the tag before you actually use it. So just go to styledcomponents.com to check that one out. It's very simple. Now Tailwind CSS, on the other hand, is a utility first CSS framework. So what it essentially does is that it allows you to put in those CSS classes inside of your tags directly by the means of using a class. So take this one that you're seeing over here. So they just take your CSS and they cram it down to simple code that you can use. So over here, this is padding top. So over here you can see it's padding top, and they're using 6 over here. And here this is text align center, and this is space Y4. You can just like comment what you think that is. And then over here, this is like the font, the font size. So they're giving it the font size of large. And then in here, this is the font weight, and they're giving it a medium bold. So it's like a utility first type of CSS. They're cramming your CSS into like small bits of code so that you can take that code and then input it directly into your elements. So you can go ahead to tailwindcss.com to check out Tailwind CSS. It's very easy to use, and I hope you like it, because many people seem to enjoy working with Tailwind CSS, and many companies as well. So go ahead and go to tailwindcss.com to check out how to use Tailwind CSS. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to construct an introduction to our portfolio. So as a beginner, one of the things that you really need to have is a portfolio website. So that's what we're going to construct in here. Today we're going to construct it inside of our app.jsx. So what I would encourage you to do is that to just like get rid of everything that is inside of your app.js, especially everything that is inside of this div component this div tag. Get rid of that. Get rid of the class name as well. Get rid of the states. Okay, so we're going to create a portfolio website, a simple portfolio website. But before we actually do anything, what I would need to do is to install Tailwind CSS. Now go to tailwindcss.com or just Google Tailwind CSS React.js, and it will guide you to this guideline on how to install Tailwind CSS into your website. Now I'm going to leave a card that details this thing step by step so that you can just like watch out for that video. But I actually do want, as a new developer, I would prefer that you know Tailwind CSS along with React, because they just work together so well. So I'm just going to install Tailwind CSS, and then we're going to continue with our video. And then after installing Tailwind CSS, I'm going to install this npm react install react icons, because I want to utilize those icons. Actually get rid of this, and then I want to install react icons. Alright, so after installing the icons, we're going to create a folder, and we're going to call it components. And inside we're going to have another folder, and we're going to call it navbar.jsx, like that. And we're going to use a React shortcode, RFX. These shortcodes, you can, in order to access them, you need to install this package over here called ES7 React Redux React Native Snippets. So it just allows you to create those little things that you don't really need to type out each time. Right, cool. By the way, I'm using Prettier as my code formatter, so this is why all of this is what is happening. I don't want it to format like this as yet. Cool. So now inside of here, we're going to create a navbar. But first we need to import an icon at the very top. There's our icon we need to import. This is fine. And then I'm going to paste what I had previously done. Don't worry, I'm going to put this code in the description box. There we go. Maybe change this name to maybe coding 101. Like that. I'm going to provide this code in the description box. If I don't, do remind me by commenting, you forgot to put in the source code. And I'll be able to do that. So you can see this is just those utility classes that I was telling you about that are provided to us by Tailwind CSS. And this is the icon that we have. How about we just put that in our app.jsx and see how it actually works? How about that? Would you like that? So let's get rid of all this as first. So we're just gonna import. We're just gonna put it in. It's called what? Navbar. Navbar, like this. And then this is how we put that component inside there. And we can go back to our project and see how that works out. And then there we have our navigation bar. So this is like sort of like a duck mode, and this is whereby somebody can just click in order to download our resume. We haven't set that up yet, so don't worry about that as yet. What we want to do now is that we want to put in our avatar. So our avatar will actually be our hero section. So I'm going to come back to components, and I'm just going to say hero.jsx again. Oh, I didn't type that correctly. All right. .jsx, like that. I'm just going to say RFX. Alright, and now that we've pasted our snippet, we actually need to import a couple of icons that you see over there. I'm just going to import these icons here at the very top. That should be fine. Now let's go back to our project, see how everything looks. It hasn't rendered. Or has it? Oh, it's because we haven't put in our hero section inside of our app.jsx. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to say hero. And I'm going to check. So it's supposed to show our picture here, but we haven't actually put in our picture, have we? So we need to put in our picture, but that's neither here nor there. At least we sort of like have everything all together. This is supposed to be nothing too complicated. It's supposed to be just a simple introductory portfolio. We can just put in our footer and just like maybe call it a day, right? So the footer, I'm going to create that component again. We could actually put it directly, but I just want to teach you how to use components. RFC, and inside of here we can just put in, inside here we can just put in our footer like that. Alright, it's actually 2023 now. So, and then we go back to our app.js and we put in our footer like that. Nothing complicated. Go back to our website and our footer is, there it is. So this is a very simple resume. So now what we want to happen, let's make it a little bit responsive. So this one you can just put in your LinkedIn information, your Instagram, everything that you want in there. But I'm just particularly interested in this one, this A tag. We're going to put it in our download so to make sure that they're able to like actually download our portfolio, our resume, sorry. Alright, so I've just put in my resume inside my assets folder so that I can easily access it. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to say download. And then I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe I think I should say resume. That should be fine. And then inside of here, I'm going to put the location of this. I'm going to say it's ... You go back. And then you say assets, and then resume.pdf. I think that's it. And now we can just like simply go to our website. So what we expect is to, once we click here, to download our resume. But geez, not as a text document. That's not gonna work. Alright, and now we go to our website. If we click here, it should give us our resume. Let's try clicking again. And there we have our resume. Alright. For some reason it says failed, no file found. So let's get to the bottom of that. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to import it at the very top. I'm just going to say import resume from, and then I'm going to say, just like I did, resume.pdf. And instead of putting an href over here, I'm just going to put that in here. And I'm going to pray that this works. So I'm going to click again. And again. Alright, there we go. And then say resume. And there we go. There we have our resume. So you can also put your avatar over here. I'm feeling a bit lazy to put it out there, but you know what? Let me just put it up. And there's my beautiful face on the avatar. There we go. So all I just needed to do was just import. I put the avatar inside the assets folder and I imported it at the very top and just took that name that I created and just put it inside of the SRC. So like I said, I'm going to put this inside of my GitHub and I'm going to provide the link down below so that you can look at the code so that you can look at the code much more carefully. So now we need to deploy it, because I had promised you that I'm going to deploy it. But before we deploy it, we need to actually upload it to GitHub, because we're actually going to be uploading it using GitHub. Go back to your terminal, say git init. Yeah, say git init like that. And then after that, you can just simply say git add and one step at a time. Yes, and then after that, you need to say git commit first commit, like that. Alright, there we go. And after that, we need to go to our GitHub. And we actually need to go to repositories, right? Okay. Create a new repository and call it, sorry about that. Call it coding portfolio, like that. And it's going to be public, it's fine. Everything's good. And now create repository. And then once it's done doing that, all you need to do is to just, I think, take this, right? Yeah. And just put it in here. That's cool. And you say git push -u origin master, because our branch is master. If you're not familiar with GitHub, I'm going to put it up in my card, that GitHub tutorial, so that you can just learn a bit about GitHub. It's nothing too complicated. Forgot to do one thing. We have to declare the main branch. So we just need to say git branch -m master. So that is okay. So now we can just say git push -u origin master. And if we come over here and we just refresh this, you can see there is our project. Alright, so after you've uploaded everything in GitHub, now I just want to call your attention to this situation over here. I just changed that repository, so there's something that I did wrong, but it's nothing that you should be concerned about. I was actually testing a different way on how to deploy this application to GitHub, so I realized that there's actually a much better way, a much simpler way to do it, which is the one that I'm going to show you right now. So you're done you're done uploading your project to GitHub. So in order to deploy, what you need to do is go to your terminal and install GitHub Pages as a dev dependency. So you just say npm install gh-pages, and then you just say -- save dev like this, and you install GitHub Pages. Now, after your GH Pages has done installing, what you need to do is to come over here and create a homepage field like that. And then you're going to follow this format that you're seeing over here. You're going to replace a couple of things. Over here, you're going to put your GitHub username. I'm going to put mine. And then you're going to put the name of your repository over here. My portfolio, like this. And you save. And then you're going to create 2 extra fields that you see over here, pre-deploy and deploy. So the first one is going to just build your application and deduce them to static assets. And then the first one is going to deploy those static assets to GitHub Pages. So make sure that you have these 2 fields inside of your package.json. And one other important thing is that you need to go to your Vite configuration file at the very bottom, let me see if I can just pull it up. Alright. I can't seem to find my JIT. Okay. Alright, there it is. My JIT configuration file. And then over here, you need to create this base over here, this field that you see inside of define config. You need to create this field called base, and inside you're going to put 2 forward slashes, and then in here you're going to put the name of your repository once again. So this is very important. Make sure that you do not miss this step at all. You come over here to vit.config.js, and then you add this extra field. It's not going to be added. You're going to add the base field, and you're going to put the name of your portfolio, the name of your repository in between these 2 forward slashes. And after that, just simply save, and then go over to your command prompt. Of course, this is our GitHub pages is done. And just type npm run deploy. npm run deploy. And if it has successfully deployed your static website, you should see this publish that you see over here. Wait like a minute or so before you do the next step. So you come over here to the home page and you just like copy this entire thing that you see over here. This is the link. This is where you're going to be accessing your page. So now you go to your browser and then you just enter it. And there it is. There's your homepage. There's your itsy bitsy portfolio over there. So you've successfully deployed your application. I hope it's not a too complicated process, because I was really working hard to make sure that it's not too complicated, because other ways of deploying, as you've already seen with some methods that I have in my channel, can be a little bit complicated. So that's me over there. And this is my little bit of a portfolio. And you can see that even if I click here, let me try to click here, don't disappoint me. I can still download my resume properly. There you go. I've went to the well too many times. So there is my resume. I can still download it, and I have a bit of like a text over here that shows the type of stuff that I'm good in. I'm going to give you the repository to this portfolio over here. I just want to give a special shout out to this guy over here, Radendi, because I took some things from this project of his on the design of the portfolio. So I didn't entirely do it on my own. I just want to give credit where it's due. So that is it for today's tutorial. I was just showing you how React works. I hope it really has enlightened you on the use cases of React and how React can be super important in your life. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have subscribed to my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure that you click the subscribe button. And if you haven't liked this video, if you've enjoyed it, or if you've learned something new, then I would really appreciate it if you could just press the like button, because this is going to help so that the video could go to others who may need it as well. And if you have any comments or any commentary, just make sure that you leave them in the comments section. And with that, let me say thank you for watching. I will see you next time on Coding 101.